Well, welcome to the Senior Life Network podcast, and I'm Fred Ortiz, your host. Thanks for joining us. Today, our topic is the Texas Out-of-Hospital DNR. And there are a lot of questions and concerns about the DNR, what it looks like, who should have one, when you should get one. And I am going to try to make some sense out of all of it. But the first thing I would say is that you need to have a conversation with your family, with your doctor, with your attorney. There's a lot of moving parts to it. But too many people get a DNR when they don't need one. There's absolutely no reason that I know of for me at 57 years old and as healthy as I am to have a DNR. So a DNR is a do not resuscitate order. And so what does that actually mean? A DNR in the state of Texas, the form looks like this. Now, it's not all highlighted like this. And for the EMS professionals out there where this used to be red on the top corner, it's not red anymore. It comes out black. It does say stop. And it's about a size 6 font. So make sure you bring your cheaters to read this thing. But let's talk about what it is and what it's not. But a DNR is designed specifically by somebody who chooses that they don't want cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, done on them. They don't want transcutaneous, that's easy for me to say, transcutaneous cardiac pacing, defibrillation, advanced airway management, or artificial ventilation. That's it. So that may be very necessary if you are terminal, if you're on hospice, if you have an extremely poor quality of life, and if you're 95 years old, you're frail, somebody does CPR on you and they're just going to crush your chest and it's going to be miserable, and the odds of resuscitation are not good anyway, this is great for that. But for somebody my age, 57 years old, if I went into cardiac arrest secondary to myocardial infarction, a heart attack, a STEMI, and I'm resuscitated, and they can get me to a PCI, and they can put a stent in me and resuscitate me, I absolutely want that. I have seen that. It can happen. And today, with the CPR being done today, the equipment, the protocols that are done, we resuscitate a lot of people in the field today. It is amazing the difference in resuscitation numbers from back in the 90s to today because of the science behind resuscitation. And yes, you can have a cardiac arrest and be resuscitated and live a perfectly normal life. So understand the difference here. Somebody young and healthy, you don't want a DNR. There are other forms, and I pulled out my will. I've got all these other different forms you may want to have in case you wind up sick, in case you wind up going through a cardiac arrest or a traumatic arrest, or you wind up with a tumor in your brain and you need something else. There are other forms and instruments available for that. But let's look at this DNR. So the first thing that really says is that you're not going to do any of those 5 things that I mentioned where you don't want CPR. And again, that's fine if you're terminal and we know you've got stage 4 cancer, you've got a brain tumor, whatever it is, you've been determined that you are terminal now and you're not going to want to be resuscitated. So what does it take? And the other thing, this is confused by everyone. And I want to clarify this. The DNR says we're not going to resuscitate. We're not going to do CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. What it doesn't say is that you can't be treated for anything else. And that's where a lot of places get confused. A lot of people, even in the health field, that you can still receive comfort care if you're on hospice. So let's say you get a UTI, a urinary tract infection. You absolutely can treat someone who has a DNR for that, even if they're on hospice. You can still treat them. They deserve to have the antibodies. They deserve to be able to rest in peace and comfort. And the DNR does not stop you from doing that. If you're in the healthcare profession, let me just be very clear on that. It says here, and again, you have to understand that this is the font is about a number 9 on this. So I'm going to read right off the page what I've got highlighted here. It says, comfort care will be given as needed. All right. So very important that we can treat a dehydration. You can treat a UTI. If you're in an accident and you have this and your arm is amputated, please help me take care of this problem. The only time the DNR comes into effect is if we need to do CPR. If you stop breathing, you don't want advanced airway management. You don't want artificial ventilation. And there's a whole list of instructions on the second page. I'll show them to you. Again, the font is tiny, tiny, tiny. So I have had to highlight each item here because it's really hard to read. And that's probably why there's so much confusion, because nobody can actually read the form. So first of all, this requires your legal name and your date of birth, whether you're male or female, the declaration. So line A is an actually declaration of the adult person. This means you're an adult, competent person, you're 18 years or older, and you direct that none of the following resuscitation measures be initiated or continued for yourself. For me, it says cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which we all know is CPR, transcutaneous cardiac pacing, defibrillation, advanced airway management, or artificial ventilation. And artificial ventilation, which I meant to say a minute ago, is basically using a bag valve mask. And here it describes a football-size mask in the instructions. So you'll sign this. And if you're the one signing it and you're competent and you are able to make this decision, then you can skip all the way down to where it says 2 witnesses. Now, I think it's important to understand the witnesses and where this comes from. So I'm going to click over on my computer to Health and Safety Code Chapter 166, and I believe that is covered what a witness is in 166.003. Very important that you understand who can be a witness and who should not be a witness. But it says, in any circumstance in which this chapter requires the execution of an advance directive or the issuance of a non-written advance directive to be witnessed, each witness must be a competent adult, and at least one of the witnesses must be a person who is not. That means you can't be a person designated by the declarant to make a health care or treatment decision, a person related to the declarant by blood or marriage, a person entitled to any part of the declarant's estate after the declarant's death under a will or codicil executed by the declarant or by operation of law, cannot be the attending physician, cannot be an employee of the attending physician, and the attending physician is what we use common today as your primary care physician. An employee of a health care facility in which the declarant is a patient if the employee is providing direct patient care to the declarant or is an officer, director, partner, or business office employee of the health care facility or any parent organization of the health care facility, or a person who at the time of the written advance directive is executed, or if the directive is a non-written directive issued under this chapter at the time of non-written directive is issued and a claim against the part of the declarant's estate after the declarant's death. Man, that's a whole lot to say who cannot and who can be a witness. So the simple thing is, it cannot be a family member. It cannot be a spouse, a blood family member. It cannot be your physician, who's going to have to sign this at some point, but not as a witness. It cannot be anyone who stands to gain from your death. So one witness can be that person, but according to the instructions, witness number 1 cannot be any of those things. Witness number 2, I guess, doesn't clarify, so it can be pretty much anybody in that place. Now, the other thing is, if you're in the hospital and you're looking for a witness, or somebody who has nothing to do with your medical care or your outcome, like the dietitian, the chaplain, somebody like that, the social worker, they can actually be used for this because they're not directly involved in your care. So I hope I've made that clear and not as clear as mud. But it's important to understand who can and who cannot be that witness and when you need one. Now, if you don't have a witness, or if you're preparing this way out in advance, you can actually have it notarized in lieu or instead of the 2 witnesses, as long as the notary witnesses you sign this form at the top. And then anyone, okay, let me do, before I get to anyone, the next thing is the physician statement. So your physician, your doctor, your attending, your primary care provider, there's a statement here that's made. It says, I am the attending physician of the above noted person and have noted the existence of this order in the person's medical records. I direct healthcare professionals acting in and out of the hospital setting, including in a hospital emergency department, not to initiate or continue for the person cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, transcutaneous cardiac pacing, defibrillation, advanced airway management, and artificial ventilation. The doctor has to sign this, and then you have a place for his signature, his printed name, the date, and the license number. Now, everyone who has signed so far, whoever that is, you, your physician, your 2 witnesses, or your notary, all have to sign it again at the very bottom of this form. And one thing I am going to cover, you got to be careful when you print this form, because if you don't do it where it will print or fit to print or whatever it says on your printer, you won't get this bottom line. This is the original, and I'm sure you can't see it, but it didn't print the bottom line signatures and the continuation of the instructions on the next page. Now, that's the simple utilization of the DNR, and it changes. Maybe you are a child, or your child is extremely ill, and they're born with a illness that they're not gonna recover from, or they've become terminal. There are different lines that need to be signed here, and you have to declare whether you are the legal guardian, proxy, agent, and again, you're required to sign there. Or maybe the person is just not competent to sign. So there's another line here, C for that. Line D is line D is a declaration of by a physician based on a directive to physicians by a person now incompetent, or non-written communication to the physician by a competent person. So in other words, you've already taken care of all this other paperwork here for your directive to physicians, let me just pull some of this out, because I'll be making this stuff up if not. This is the will, medical power of attorney, designation of healthcare agent, medical release, authorization to release. So you got a HIPAA release. Jason talked about that in his podcast. All these forms, statutory durable power of attorney, and notice of revocation of the statutory durable power of attorney. So all these different forms. If you sit down with your attorney to take care of your estate planning, you can take care of this now. Something happens to you, you become incapacitated. You didn't have a DNR, but your attorney or whoever you mentioned here knows what your will is, what your advanced care is, what your desire is. Then they can go to these forms, and you don't wind up living on a ventilator the rest of your life. So important to understand that. Who can sign, who shouldn't sign. I'm not going to really jump and dive into the directives to physicians, but again, you can find that, and we're going to have the links attached on how to get to these different areas, advanced directives, the link here through the Department of State Health Services. A lot of this has already been pre-thought. There's forms in here that are easy for you to figure out. They're in Spanish, they're in English. The actual DNR is in Spanish as well. We do have a largely Spanish-speaking population around here, so it is important that it's easy to understand for them as well. There's a whole lot involved in this, and when you're involved in this particular type of incident in an emergency situation, a lot of emotions come into play. So you may have two family members who are saying, oh, I don't believe in this, or this is what mom wanted. Man, if you have this in writing, it makes it a lot easier. Now, I do want to say that on the very top line of this, again, and I'm going to read it on the computer because it is just so tiny. I wish you could just see how small this is. And again, that's why I'm covering it. I really think there's so much miscommunication because people can't read this thing. This document becomes effective immediately on the date of execution for healthcare professionals acting in out-of-hospital settings. It remains in effect until the person is pronounced dead by authorized medical or legal authority, or the document is revoked. So it can be revoked at any time as well. And I think that's a whole nother topic that we can get into, is who can revoke this. And I'm pretty sure just about anybody can revoke it. You can revoke it. Your family can revoke it. And so now we move into, I hope there were some other paperwork done as far as advanced directives to physicians, because then it really becomes a tough scenario when you have people not wanting to honor the DNR. And hey, I get that. Again, these are high emotion situations, scenarios, and especially if it winds up being something that just happened all of a sudden, a cardiac arrest, a stroke that led to this, and you decide, hey, I want to work mom. I will tell you, I have resuscitated people who had a DNR, but the DNR was not presented to me until after we were transporting the patient and we had already resuscitated the patient. So he was extremely glad that the DNR was not presented, that, under all the stress, again, something happens, it is your adrenaline level shoots through the roof and you're not thinking straight and you can forget that you have one of these. So luckily for him, and he was very grateful that we resuscitated him in that moment. The other thing is who does this affect? So this means EMS, a doctor's office, medical professionals outside, and even the emergency room, believe it or not. The out-of-hospital DNR can be and will be honored by all of these people. EMS shows up, you've got a DNR, we're not going to work you. If you're in cardiac arrest, if you're struggling to breathe, we're not going to do advanced airway for you. If you're dehydrated, yeah, you're going to get treated for dehydration. But all of these things it's important to understand that the ER is technically outside of the hospital, even though it's attached to the hospital. The emergency room physician and nurses can and will honor this out-of-hospital DNR. So this makes sense when you are brought into the emergency room. If you go into cardiac arrest in ICU or on the floor, you're going to be worked because this form is not the correct form for you anymore. So again, it goes to advanced directives, durable power of attorney, all those other instruments that are available to you, and just understanding that that is very important. If you look, once again, we'll show you this website. It's extremely long. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it would take me 10 minutes. But the signed copy must be given to EMS if you want them to honor it. So you got to have it around. You got to show it to them. They can look at it. If all the signatures are in place, they're going to honor it. Okay. The only other thing that will be honored, other than the original or a copy of this form, is a bracelet, which is an approved bracelet that you wear. It says DNR. If you have a tattoo, that's not going to be honored. If you have a copy of this on your telephone, it's not going to be honored. Okay, so just understanding what it takes for this to be honored. Now, if the form doesn't seem to be filled out correctly, EMS can and should continue to work you and resuscitate you until they get all this figured out. So if they think that and they can, healthcare professionals can refuse to honor the DNR if they think that the patient is pregnant, that there are unnatural circumstances surrounding the death, and that if the form is not signed twice by all who need to sign it or is filled out incorrectly. So again, they can and will honor it as long as it looks good. If there's a couple of different things, it may not be honored, but I would really look into the ins and outs of this. Speak to your attorney, speak to your physician. If your physician fills it out, they're going to put a copy in your medical record so it's there for them. And the rule states that a DNR device shall be honored in lieu of a DNR form. So we covered that as well. Got the websites on here. You can go to the rule. You can go to this. You can look at the physician statement. Again, the instructions are tiny, but I highlighted everything that I thought was important, and we'll make sure you can see a copy of this where it makes sense. Revocation and out-of-hospital DNR. Orders may be revoked at any time by the person's authorized representative, or physician who executed the order. Revocation can be by verbal communication to responding healthcare professionals, and destruction of the out-of-hospital DNR, or removal of all out-of-hospital DNR identification devices from the person. So obviously you can change your mind at any time and decide, I want to live. I want to live. The frequently asked questions, there's already printed out for you. Again, I highlighted the ones that I thought were important. Artificial ventilation, we talked about that, but it says when trained people use a football-sized bag and a mask that fits over a person's mouth and nose to push air into the lungs when the patient cannot breathe on their own or have stopped breathing. And then again, this is very important. It says here in blue, I highlighted it blue, does this mean that there are no comfort or palliative measures offered? No. Comfort measures are specifically allowed. So keep that in mind. Yes, this is offered in Spanish as well. That's about all I got. There's a lot to it. Guys, understand, speak to your attorney, speak to your physician if you think you want a DNR. Again, I strongly recommend, and I believe it's almost a policy that if you're on hospice, that you get a DNR. It does not restrict you from palliative care. It does not restrict you from being treated for a UTI or bed sores. Hospice care stops the treatment of the disease and the medications, the treatment of the disease that are making you terminal, whatever that is. If you are dehydrated, you can be treated for that. If you have bed sores, you can be treated for that. If you have a UTI, you can be treated for that. So you just need to understand that if you are on hospice, a DNR is the right instrument for you. Again, I'm not an attorney. I've been a paramedic for 35 years, and I just understand this pretty deeply and understand that people have gotten DNRs and they've come into effect, and we could have probably saved their life had the DNR not been presented. Again, I'm Fred Ortiz with the Senior Life Network podcast, and I just want to thank you guys for watching. If this is helpful, let us know. Like, share, click, all those things that we need you to do. If you think this information is helpful, please share it with your friends. Invite everybody on Facebook on the podcast. We just hope that we are being beneficial to everyone who is watching this. Thank you.